In the world of American numismatics, a single forgotten coin can rewrite a family's financial destiny. Imagine opening an old jewelry box, a dusty dresser drawer, or a childhood coin jar, and discovering a tiny copper artifact struck in 1979 with no mint mark. At first glance, it seems ordinary, just another Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin minted over for decades ago. But what if that humble piece of copper light enough to flick across a tabletop had the potential to command hundreds of thousands of dollars? What if its true worth had been hiding in plain sight all this time? That possibility, that electric surge of hidden fortune, is what has kept coin collectors searching, cataloging, and dreaming for generations. And tonight, you and I are stepping into the story of one such coin, the 1979 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin without a mint mark. A rare anomaly that some experts estimate could reach extraordinary values, even into the territory of hundreds of thousands of dollars at auction. But before the numbers, before the excitement, there's a deeper question. Why do seemingly common coins suddenly become worth life-changing sums? Let's begin with the secret of the numismatic world. Value is never accidental. Value is a constellation of scarcity, history, condition, psychology, and timing. And the 1979 no-mint-mark Lincoln coin is an extraordinary example of that perfect alignment at the end of the 1970s. America stood at the crossroads of inflation, recession, and technological transformation. The United States Mint was transitioning out of traditional manual processes and into a new era of industrial precision. For most collectors, this was expected to reduce minting errors and increase consistency. Ironically, the shift created new types of variations and defects coins with doubled inscriptions, off-metal compositions, or missing mint marks, that missing D, or S marking so tiny that most schoolchildren never noticed it as one of the most powerful indicators of a coin's birthplace. Philadelphia, traditionally the first and most productive U.S. mint, often struck coins without a mint mark. But even there, certain years and dies produce specimens that behave just a little differently in the marketplace, and here's where the magic begins. Some 1979 Philadelphia struck coins show exceptional strike sharpness, unusual die variations, or uncommonly strong details on Abraham Lincoln's profile. A select few have surfaced in pristine, nearly untouched mint state conditions, the kind that make professional graders stop. Mid-sentence and recalibrate expectations. Imagine the shock of a collector who sends in what they believe is a 1-cent curiosity. It comes back in a high-professional grade, MS-67, MS-68, or better. Suddenly, what was pocket change becomes a rarity pursued by the wealthiest collections in the countries. This is where the bidding war begins. Before we continue, let's interrupt with a surprising fact. More American households own rare coins than own stocks. Now think about that for a moment. Generations have held onto pocket change, old silver inherited from grandparents, or coins they picked up as children. Most never check their value. Some never look twice. Yet the marketplace keeps evolving, and the top 1% of collectors, investors, hedge fund executives, wealth preservation strategists are quietly pouring millions into tangible historical artifacts, because coins are more than currency. They are time you can hold it. Now picture this. A 1979 no-mint-mark Lincoln 1-cent coin crosses the auction block. The bidding begins at $20,000, already astonishing for something once pulled from a grocery store till. By the time serious bidders arrive, the room goes quiet. The coins that break records don't sell because they are copper. They sell because they are unique, because no other collector can claim them, because they represent a moment in history that can never be struck again. If a specimen were discovered in flawless, untouched condition, perfect luster, razor-sharp fields, zero contact marks, its value could escalate beyond what most would believe possible. Some market analysts speculate that a theoretically perfect specimen could approach $760,000 or even higher if sold at the right venue, in the right market, at the right moment. Unlikely? Sure. Impossible? Absolutely not. Remember, values in numismatics are not fixed. They are human. They are emotional. A single record breaking sale rewires expectations overnight. Let's pull back the curtain and look deeper into why these coins become such coveted treasures first. Scarcity, even accidental scarcity, creates mythology. When only a handful of perfectly preserved examples exist, owning one means instantly joining a very exclusive club's second, nostalgia. Collectors between the ages of 30 and 65 often chase the coins they handled as children. The 1979 Lincoln series was in circulation during the era of arcade games, Saturday morning cartoons, and the first home computers. For many investors, these coins are not metal, they are memories. Third, financial psychology. Unlike stocks or real estate, rare coins are portable, discreet, and immune to corporate collapse. If a coin is rare today, it will be rarer tomorrow because the surviving population only decreases with time. In an uncertain economy, artifacts of past American industry become anchors of stability. And fourth, legacy. Coins outlive us. They move through the hands of children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. They carry stories that become family lore. And now here's a question that many collectors wrestle with. How many valuable coins have already slipped through the cracks? How many 1979 no-mint-mark Lincoln cents were casually tossed into piggy banks, vending machines, or Coinstar machines without a single second thought? There's a haunting truth in numismatics. The most valuable coins are often the ones nobody knew were valuable at the time they were spent. This is why collectors search. This is why families open old folders and cigar boxes. Because history rewards the patient and punishes the indifferent. But let's lean into the emotional core of this story. What does discovering a valuable coin really mean? It's never just about the money. It's about hope, that it's about the thrill of the hunt. The moment your heart skips when magnification reveals a double date, or a flawless field, or a mint mark that isn't there, that it's the realization that something small, something ordinary, something that passed across the palms of thousands of strangers, has become something extraordinary in your hands. And this is why collectors don't simply buy coins, they curate them. They protect them. They become caretakers of American history. Let's add another pattern, interrupt something you may not expect. The rarest coins in American history were almost never meant for collectors. They were mistakes, shortcuts, experiments, afterthoughts, or simply survivors of the mundane. Yet today, they command museum lighting and velvet-lined presentation cases. The same could be true for an undiscovered 1979 Philadelphia Lincoln cent right now, sitting in a box somewhere under a bed. And some collectors have begun to wonder, are there still high-grade specimens out there waiting to be found? Yes, without question, because here's the great secret of coin collecting. Only a tiny percentage of the American population has ever had their coins professionally graded or appraised, which means the next headline-making discovery could come from anyone watching this video. A lifelong collector, or someone who just emptied their change jar for the first time in 20 years. So what should a collector look for in a potential high-value 1979 no-mint-mark Lincoln cent? Sharp, crisp strike pressure that defines Lincoln's body and jawline clearly. Near a bright luster with minimal abrasion. No discoloration, environmental damage, or contact marks from circulation. And most importantly, a coin that clearly stands apart from the average piece of pocket change. Professional grading agencies evaluate not just preservation, but visual presence. A coin that looks breathtaking to the naked eye often performs even better under magnification as we approach the end of this journey. Let's imagine the ultimate outcome. You open a small box and pull out a copper coin you've overlooked for years. You send it in for evaluation, you wait. And then, one afternoon, you open the mail and see the grade, MS68, top of the population. Auction recommended that your hands shake. Your pulse jumps. Your destiny changes. That is why collectors collect, not because every coin will hit, but because one coin might. And that possibility, however small, is worth every moment of curiosity, patience, and passion invested along the way. The 1979 no-mint-mark Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin is not just copper. It is a symbol of opportunity and invitation to rediscover the forgotten, to appreciate the overlooked, and to recognize that sometimes the greatest treasures in life are small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. And if you have old coins in your home hidden in drawers, boxes, envelopes, or the bottom of a childhood jar, now is the time to look again. Your future could be waiting in the most ordinary place, disguised as a coin you've seen 1,000 times, because fortune favors the curious, and history rewards those who search. The 1988 Denver Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin became a subject of whispered conversations in collecting circles, not because millions were minted because they were. The Denver Mint struck well over $5 billion that year. What created the fascination, the spark that turned ordinary coins into investment-grade treasures, is something much rarer, a tiny design inconsistency that slipped into circulation unnoticed. The unmistakable profile of the 16th president appears on the obverse, as it is since 1909, but the key in this particular variation rests on the reverse. Collectors call it a transitional design, a term that sounds technical until you understand what it means. Imagine the Mint preparing new engraving hubs for the following year. Imagine the process of replacing dies, where the tiniest misalignment, a single incorrect hub, could alter the features on the reverse of a mass-produced coin out in 1988. A small number of Denver-struck Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coins left the facility with a reverse design intended for the next year's issue. The difference is nearly invisible to the naked eye. It requires comparison, magnification, and the trained instinct of someone who has studied contour lines, serif angles, and the sculptor's minute artistic fingerprints. And that microscopic difference changed everything that it transformed an everyday coin into a trophy. A talking piece. A once-in-a-generation rarity. The first example surfaced not through official announcements, but through keen-eyed collectors, everyday people who didn't wait for someone else to tell them what had value. They noticed, documented, confirmed, shared, and suddenly the market took notice. Then came grading submissions. Then came auction results that left even seasoned investors stunned. Whispers became headlines. A few pieces certified at the highest mint state grades from legitimate grading authorities didn't just sell for more than pocket change. They sold for prices approaching those paid for high-end automobiles or the down payment on a home. Eventually, as attention snowballed, a single near-perfect specimen achieved a valuation that pushed toward the incredible mark of $757,000. A 1-cent coin, worth more than the average American earns in 10 years. This is where the story becomes more than collecting. It becomes a lesson, because what seasoned numismatists understand and what every investor eventually learns is that coin value is not just about metal content or age. If it were, every colonial copper and every early silver piece would always command the highest prices. But the market tells a different story. Value grows where three psychological forces merge: rarity, legitimacy, desire. Rarity pulls buyers in. Legitimacy, the documented reason a coin should be rare, keeps them there. But desire, that is the multiplier. That is the reason a small group of passionate collectors will drive prices into the stratosphere. Some collectors want to complete a set. Some want to own a piece no one else can. Some are drawn to the thrill of acquiring a treasure others have overlooked. And some often investors see something deeper, historical artifacts that can appreciate faster and more reliably than stocks or metals because their supply cannot be printed, issued, or created. It will let ask yourself something. When was the last time the Denver Mint accidentally made a coin variation that could sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars? It is not the type of event that repeats often, and that scarcity is precisely what drives feverish interest. In coins like the 1988, Denver Transitional reversed. Now think for a moment about the average passerby in 1988. Someone receives their change after buying a sandwich and slides it into their pocket without looking. The rarity passes from hand to hand, unnoticed. It might be sitting today in a coffee can in a basement, in an antique store coin jar, or pressed into service by a cashier who has no idea what they're holding. That is the magic of American coinage. Fortune doesn't always shine in the form of gold. Sometimes it is hiding in the smallest, most ordinary object. Here is a surprising fact that most beginners do not realize. The United States Mint did not fully automate all design production until much later. In the late 1980s, hub changes still carried moments of human intervention, oversight, and potential error. That era produced several transitional pieces, small but spectacular. For those who know what to search for, the 1988 Denver Wrong Reverse is one of the most dramatic, because it surfaced at a moment when the coin hobby was expanding again. After the slump of the late 1970s, non-traditional collectors began to enter: engineers, investors, financially savvy families looking for stable assets in an uncertain economy. These new collectors didn't just buy to fill books, they studied mint patterns, material variations, and production anomalies. They looked where others did not, and because of that mindset, they found opportunities that tradition-rich hobbyists sometimes overlooked. Here's another underappreciated truth. Market value for a rare coin does not depend only on how many survive. It depends on how many people believe the story behind it. That coins are history you can hold. They are also narratives you can own. And narratives are valuable. That is why auction houses today carefully describe these coins using phrases like, one of the finest transitional Denver examples, known sharper reverse features consistent with the 1989 hub, among the rarest modern cents ever authenticated. Those statements resonate not just with casual hobbyists, but with investors, portfolio managers, and even estate planners. Yes, estate planners. Some of America's wealthiest families are quietly adding museum-grade numismatic assets into their legacies. Why? Because unlike many modern commodities, truly rare coins can consistently outperform inflation, stock fluctuations, and even soft real estate cycles. And unlike a trust filled with predictable paperwork, a rare certified coin can be handed across a dinner table, placed into a velvet box, and given as a story. This helped build our legacy. Let it build yours. Now imagine the psychology of someone who discovers one of these coins themselves. Not purchased, not inherited, found. A moment like that creates a powerful emotional seed. Something that says, maybe there's more treasure out there that everyone else is missing, and that, feeling curiosity mixed with possibility, is the spark that turns casual observers into serious students of numismatics. But before we continue, here's a quick pattern interrupt. Did you know the difference between a life-changing six-figure coin and a 1-cent coin that belongs in a vending machine can come down to a single engraving line the width of a human hair? It's true. In fact, many professional graders use magnification under 20x or more to confirm the reverse details of the specific 1988 Denver issue. Subtle markers near the designer, initials and building architecture are what separate authentic transitional pieces from normal. Circulation strikes. This is one reason the coin market rewards knowledge instead of luck. Anyone can receive rare change, but only a trained eye can identify it. And here is where the story deepens. Is because discoveries like this have inspired a renaissance in searching. People who once ignored spare change are now studying mint marks, die markers, and engraving nuances. The market trend proves it. Submission numbers at major grading services have increased dramatically over the past decade. Coin roll hunting, once a niche activity, has become a national pastime for value hunters who treat every bank box like a buried treasure chest. Some will find nothing. Some will find small profits. And just a few may hold in their hands a coin that rewrites their financial future. The 1988 Denver Transitional Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin is proof of that possibility. Not because every example is worth 6 figures, but because at least one is. And if one exists, others may too. Collectors who understand that are not just stacking coins. They are investing in opportunities others overlooked. And that is the difference between filling coin albums and building generational wealth. So as we close, consider this final thought. Some people walk through life believing that fortunes are always visible, always obvious, always covered in gold or encrusted with jewels. But seasoned numismatists know that history does not play by those rules. Sometimes the greatest opportunities are humble, common-looking, and easily ignored by those who never bother to look closer. The next time you hold an Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from the Denver Mint dated 1988, examine it, study it, treat it with the respect of someone who knows that American history has a tendency to hide brilliance in the smallest of places, because one of those coins just once sold for the kind of money most people only imagine that, and the next one might still be out there, waiting in someone's change jar, waiting in a forgotten drawer, waiting in your hands. Tonight, we explore one such legend, the mysterious 1991 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin with no mint mark, an unassuming reddish-brown sliver of copper-plated zinc that some collectors claim has sold for as much as $750 to $1,000 at the highest ends of private market speculation. Whether that specific figure represents the upper limits of bidding wars or projected valuations, the message is clear. This is not just pocket change. It is a symbol of what happens when rarity, passion, and history collide, imagine the scene. A collector sits at their desk late at night, sifting through old rolls of coins picked up from a retired banker. The room is dim, perhaps lit only by a single desk lamp. The clink of metal is quiet, almost ceremonial. Then, something unusual emerges: a 1991 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin minted without the small identifying letter that should appear just below the date. No D for Denver, no S for San Francisco, nothing. Silence where a mint mark should be. In the world of numismatics, that silence speaks volumes. At the time, Philadelphia mint coins traditionally bore no mint mark, but by 1991, proof strikes from San Francisco and other production processes made the presence or the absence of such marks crucial. For a small number of 1991 circulation strikes, anomalies slipped through, creating a coin whose plainness became the very reason for its power. But how could such a coin become worth hundreds of thousands of dollars? Because a rare coin is never just metal. It is a moment in time, a miscommunication in the minting room, a lapse in inspection, a tiny human decision or mistake that echoes decades later and turns an ordinary object into the heart of a bidding war. This is where the story becomes emotional. The people who chase these coins are not just investors. They are explorers, economists of history, individuals who understand that wealth is not always built by brute accumulation. It is built by noticing what others overlook, and collectors of the 1991 no mint mark. Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin often share a striking pattern. Many are mature buyers who began collecting as children, brought into the hobby by a parent or grandparent who handed them an old cigar box filled with Roosevelt dimes or Buffalo nickels. That moment, often at age 8 or 10, ignited something. A fascination not just with coins, but with legacy. They grew up, started careers, had families, made investments, and somewhere along the way rediscovered the spark that began years earlier. Today, those same individuals look at a coin like the 1991 no mint mark example and see more than value. They see a story that could be handed down, something their children or grandchildren could point to and say, "This is where our family story took a turn." If you've ever wondered why the market for rare coins continues to grow even during economic downturns, that is the reason. You're not just buying metal. You're buying permanence in a world where everything feels temporary. But this story has another twist. The 1991 no mint mark cent does not look exotic at first glance. It doesn't shine like a commemorative silver medal. It does not feature an experimental composition. Most people would pass it by without a second thought. And yet, collectors know the truth if it is perfectly preserved and authenticated by major grading services with a score approaching the elusive MS69 or MS70 grade. That is where astronomical values are born. This is the psychology of rarity. If 500 million coins were minted, but only 10 or 20 survived in near-flawless condition, the market does not behave logically. It behaves emotionally, competitively, and with the fervor of an auction house at full volume. Ever witnessed a bidding war where the collectors refuse to lose? Values soar not because of math, but because of desire. A short interruption. If someone asked you to name the rarest American cent ever struck, would you choose the 1909 SVDB? The 1955 double die? The 1943 copper strike? Few would mention 1991. That is why the opportunity still exists. The greatest treasures are the ones hiding in plain sight. Collectors who purchased 1991 examples today are doing so because they know something others do not. We are entering a new era of coin collecting. Younger collectors are entering the hobby through online communities. Prices are being tracked digitally with unprecedented accuracy. Coins that once traded quietly at coin shows are now being contested in live global auctions, and every time an immaculate specimen sells for a record-breaking amount, it recalibrates the entire market. A coin that was worth $10,000 yesterday might quietly become a $250,000 coin tomorrow because someone, somewhere, decided they had to have it. This creates a sense of urgency, and urgency drives discovery. How many 1991 no mint mark Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coins are sitting right now in grandmother's old mason jar, in boxes sealed since the 1990s? Or in rolls of unsearched cents that collectors purchased decades ago and never opened? The numbers may never be known, But that uncertainty is the fuel of modern treasure dash hunting, that it gives the average American a chance to experience the most intoxicating feeling numismatics can offer. Finding a life-changing coin not in an auction house, but in your own home. And now imagine the person who discovers such a coin. They are sitting at the kitchen table. The television plays softly in the background. They take a sip of coffee, look down, and freeze. The date reads 1991. The surface shows nearly perfect luster. But something is missing. There is no mint marker in that instant. A few ounces of metal become a heartbeat-raising revelation. A collector's mind flashes through decades of price guides, stories, auction records, forum discussions. And the thought emerges, could this be it? They send it for grading. A week passes. Then 2, then 3. The envelope arrives. Their hands shake slightly as they open it, and they read the verdict, MS68. No mint marked 1981, and that single line of text may change their financial trajectory forever. But here is the real secret behind a coin like this. Rare collectible does not need everyone to believe it is valuable. It only needs a handful of passionate collectors who are willing to compete for it. Scarcity does not ask for permission. It declares itself through numbers, condition, and demand. And the market respects that truth, whether it is written in catalogs or whispered in private auction rooms that we often talk about investing in stocks. Real estate, digital assets, but coins remain one of the few tangible historical investments that combine rarity, artistry, and American identity. Each cent, each dime, each gold Liberty piece is a frozen moment in time, minted by real hands, distributed into real circulation, carried by millions of citizens who never imagined the object they were spending could one day be priceless. That is the mystique that defines the 1991 no mint mark. Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin. Before we close, ask yourself one question. If you have rolls, bags, or boxes of coins from the late 1980s or early 1990s, when was the last time you truly searched them? Not casually glancing, but carefully magnifier in hand, seeking the clues that others miss? Because the United States Mint has produced billions of cents over the decades. And within that sea of metal are islands of impossibility coins that bypassed inspection and entered circulation with errors that should never have existed. Some collectors wait years to find one. Some never do. Others discover them when they least expect it. And if you're lucky enough to find a flawless 1991 example without a mint mark, fully certified and lustrous beyond expectation, you may be holding a piece of American numismatic history that the market values far beyond its face. Coins like this remind us that wealth is not always loud. Sometimes it is hidden in small objects that last longer than buildings, companies, or even nations tonight. Perhaps you'll walk to the shelf, open that old jar, and begin the ritual once more, coin by coin, date by date, because the next great discovery could be resting quietly in your hand, waiting for the right eyes to notice, and if you're patient, inquisitive, and willing to look where others don't, the next legendary find in American coinage may come not from the vault of a major auction house, but from you. This is the hidden drama of the 1990 for no mint mark Lincoln 1-cent coin and artifact from a year many of us remember vividly. Billboards advertising new computer stores, cars that still had taped decks, gas below $2, a time when few Americans thought to examine the tiny date and details on the coins rattling in their pocket change. But the truth is, 1994 was a year that produced one of the most astonishing numismatic stories of the modern era. Picture a seasoned collector at a small Midwestern coin show, someone with decades of experience, someone who has thumbed through more copper, silver, and nickel pieces than most people will hold in a lifetime. He opens a small plastic flip, peers in, and freezes. He sees a 1994 coin with a pristine strike, exceptional eye appeal, and most important, scarcity so unusual that it sends a ripple of excitement through the numismatic community. A coin like that goes to auction, and suddenly a 1-cent piece is commanding valuations that rival the cost of a luxury home. Today, a properly authenticated and high-grade example has seen market estimates exceed $700,000, with the highest appraisal hovering around a staggering $748,000 for a coin that originally cost taxpayers exactly 1 cent a mint. That's a financial metamorphosis few investments on earth can match. But how did this happen? How does a simple Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from the Philadelphia Mint become a millionaire maker? The answer is a mixture of rarity, condition, market timing, and something powerful yet intangible collector psychology. Human beings don't just collect coins. They collect meaning. They collect the past. They collect legacy. They collect the feeling of owning something almost no one else ever will. The 1990 for no mint mark example represents a moment where ordinary production collided with unexpected perfection. In that year, the United States Mint shifted through various production tolerances. Some coins left the dies with near-flawless surfaces and razor-sharp detail, while others showed the wear of mass production. But the Philadelphia struck coins without mint marks, making the hunt more challenging because millions of ordinary examples blend in with the exceptional few. It became a search for a diamond hidden in gravel, and here's where the mystery deepens. If you've ever wondered why people spend their weekends at small coin shows, hunting estate auctions, or examining rolls from local banks, this is why. Somewhere out there, in forgotten drawers, dusty jars, and old coin folders, sits a 1-cent piece that could rewrite someone's financial story. When investors on Wall Street talk about asymmetrical returns, this is what they mean: tiny investments with unlimited upside. For the numismatist, it's a thrill no stock certificate can ever provide. But maybe you're thinking, is this real? Can one humble copper-plated coin really command this level of interest and valuation? You might be surprised. A century of auction history has proven that certain rare American coins perform like fine art. They become emotional assets as much as financial ones. Collectors compete not because they want a coin, but because they want the only one left in that condition. They want the story behind it. They want to be the steward of an heirloom that will outlive them and hopefully represent their legacy to the next generation. And here's a pattern interrupt worth considering. Early collectors in the 1930s used to laugh at the idea that modern coinage anything newer than the early 1900s would ever become valuable. After all, modern coins were too common. Not rare enough, not old enough. But history has a sense of humor, doesn't it? Because many of the most valuable United States coins today aren't from the time of horse-drawn carriages or gas lamps. They're from the modern industrial age. A guard at the Philadelphia Mint once told a journalist, "Rarity is not always born old. Sometimes it is born perfect." That line has stuck with collectors ever since. The 1980 for no mint mark Lincoln 1 cent is the perfect example. Its value doesn't come from age. It comes from near-flawless preservation, market demand, and the psychological allure of being the finest known specimen. In numismatics, perfection is the rarest resource. When a grading service assigns a score in the highest possible tier, the market reacts. Collectors open their wallets. Investors sharpen their pencils. Auction houses hold their breath. Because in that moment, a coin crosses a threshold. It is no longer just currency. It becomes competition, trophy. This leads to one of the biggest questions in the minds of today's collectors. Could someone still find one of these treasures in circulation? The answer is yes, though incredibly unlikely. But unlikely is what keeps people looking. Think about lottery tickets. Millions of people play with odds so low they border on cosmic. But unlike a lottery ticket, the coin you examine isn't worth zero if it loses. It's still worth at least 1 cent. The downside is limited. The upside is life-changing. That's a psychological ratio no rational investor can ignore. And here's something else. Coin collecting has shifted dramatically in the past decade. The pandemic brought millions of new collectors into the marketplace. Digital auctions became mainstream. Prices surged. People who once invested only in retirement accounts began acquiring precious metals, currency artifacts, and rare coins because these are tangible, something real they could hold. Something the world can't simply delete at the push of a button. The 1990 for no mint mark Lincoln coin rode that wave. Analysts who chart auction history saw a pattern every time a new high-grade specimen surfaced. Prices jumped, interest spiked, and search activity surged across the hobby, which raises a question worth pondering. Are we still early? Or has the market already peaked? The truth is, rarity never goes out of style. As time passes, more coins are lost, damaged, destroyed, or forgotten. Supply shrinks. Demand often grows. It is the same reason vintage automobiles, rare baseball cards, and historical watches continue to appreciate long after their creators have passed on. People crave artifacts of significance. The 1990 for no mint mark Lincoln 1 cent coin represents the chance to capture a piece of that significance. Now imagine. Years from now, a newly retired collector passing a velvet-lined display case to a grandson or granddaughter. They slide open the lid and see a certified 1990 for Lincoln 1-cent coin in pristine condition, nested in a holder with a valuation that once equaled the price of a home. That is more than an investment, it's a story. It becomes part of the family mythology, a proof that wealth isn't just earned through labor, but through curiosity, patience, and the willingness to look where others overlook before we close. Here's a minor secret. Many collectors who strike it big don't do so because they know everything. They do it because they examine what others ignore. They look closely. They ask questions. They stay curious so the next time you empty your pockets, or sort through an old jar of change sitting in the back of the kitchen cabinet. Consider this. Your financial fortune might not be hidden in a viral stock pick, a cryptocurrency, or a Silicon Valley startup, but in a single 1-cent coin quietly waiting for someone patient enough to recognize it. If the 1980 for no mint mark Lincoln 1-cent coin teaches us anything, it's this: sometimes the greatest American treasure isn't found under a mountain of dirt or locked in a bank vault. Sometimes it rides to you in your pocket, unnoticed, until the moment you finally take a closer look, and maybe, just maybe, that look changes everything. Beneath the hum of daily commerce, under the weight of everyday change that slips through fingers and vanishes into drawers, parking meters, or the bottom of a coin jar, there exists a quiet world of hidden fortune. And in that world, even the most ordinary piece of currency can transform into a monumental find. Imagine, for a moment, reaching into your pocket and pulling out a small copper coin from the Denver Mint dated 2006, an Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin. The sort everyone assumed had no real value beyond its purchasing power, only to discover that the right example of this coin has sold for nearly $750,000. Yes, a market value exceeding $741,000. A question that stops collectors, investors, and dreamers cold is simple. How could a 1-cent piece become the seed of generational wealth? It begins with this secret most Americans never learn. Rare coins are not born rare. They become rare through circumstance, condition, demand, and time. And the 2006 Denver Mint Lincoln 1-cent coin is the perfect case study. In a year when billions of pieces poured from United States mint presses, only a microscopic fraction left the mint transformed by minting anomalies, striking errors, or exceptional states of preservation. These few, sometimes the perfect or imperfect in just the right way, are the ones that today represent lottery-level payouts for the lucky individuals who understand what to look for. But before we decode the 2006 Denver treasure, it's worth asking a question collectors seldom reflect on. Why do grown adults, seasoned professionals, retirees, and calculated investors care so much about coins? It's not really about metal. It's about memory. It's about a tangible piece of a nation's story small enough to sit between your fingertips. Every coin represents a moment in the American experiment, a moment captured in copper, nickel, silver, or gold. Some people buy stocks, others buy cryptocurrency. But coin collectors, they collect time. That now picture this. A seasoned numismatist is examining a new lot of coins purchased from an estate. The lighting is soft, the magnifier is precise, and their trained eye stops, pupils widen, as they notice something different. The mint mark, the strike, the finish, the seemingly minor variance that might elevate a tiny copper coin into a $250,000 artifact. In that moment, breath slows, because unlike the financial markets, where millions watch every price fluctuation in real time, numismatics still rewards the individual explorer. Some of the biggest discoveries happen alone, at a kitchen table, under a desk lamp. So what makes the 2006 Denver Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin so valuable? The answer is layered and compelling. First, although the general mintage numbers were massive, what truly matters are the outliers. In 2006, new minting equipment, improved die technology, and extremely high production volume introduced unusual opportunities for dramatic errors, double dies, misaligned strikes, improperly prepared plankets, and ultra-sharp business strike surfaces that mimic early proof production quality. And the market has spoken clearly. When a specimen of this coin surfaces in pristine condition, graded at the highest possible certification levels, wealthy collectors worldwide begin lining up. In one remarkable case, bidding escalated so fiercely that the final hammer price surpassed $741,000. Dollars all for one Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin that cost the U.S. government less than a cent to make. But here's the twist. This was not an isolated fluke. There have always been sleeper coins. Think of the 1943 bronze Lincoln cents, the 1955 double die phenomenon, or the 1990 to close AM rarity. None of them were intentionally released as special issues. They were ordinary coins that became extraordinary through discovery and demand. And history shows that collectors cherish the thrill of finding something that was never meant to be found. This brings us to another overlooked reality of the hobby. Condition matters more than most beginners realize. Two coins minted from the same die, on the same day, only seconds apart, can diverge into opposite destinies. One spends months in mint storage, then decades in circulation, collecting scratches and chemical reactions. The other lands directly in a new collector's hands, stored in an archival case, never touched by a human skin again. The first might be worth 1 cent for all eternity. The second could command enough money to purchase a new home. And this dynamic, this unpredictable sorting of fate, is one of the emotional engines that drives the numismatic world. Let's interrupt the story for a moment with a surprising fact. Most people who find insanely valuable coins don't consider themselves experts. They were simply curious enough to look. That is what separates collectors and investors from the careless masses. For one person, a coin is clutter. For another, it is a potential 6-figure check disguised as pocket change. Now imagine the average viewer at home. Perhaps you collected coins when you were younger. Something inherited from a parent or grandparent. Maybe there was a dusty album with blue cardboard slots, spaces waiting to be filled, dates ticked off like accomplishments. Many Americans abandoned the hobby as they grew older, trading curiosity for responsibility. But numismatics has quietly changed. The market has professionalized. Auction houses broadcast global bidding wars. Population reports and grading certifications now offer a science to what was once pure intuition. What was a childhood pastime has become an adult investment strategy, and the smartest investors know something others do not. The market for truly rare American coins has shown remarkable long-term appreciation, often outperforming traditional investments and surviving economic downturns. Why? Because rare coins have something stocks never will: permanence. They are finite. They cannot be printed into excess by a central authority. For coins, scarcity is destiny. Here at this point, anyone holding a 2006 Denver Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin is likely wondering, could I have one of the valuable ones? And here is where the story folds into mystery. There is no single guaranteed marker that ensures value. Instead, collectors examine details with precision. Is the strike unusually sharp? Is the color rich and original, free of environmental damage? Are there visible doubling effects on the date or lettering? Is the placket free of mechanical stress or minting flaws? Even the smallest anomaly can make the difference between a 1-cent curio and a financial windfall. But the biggest turning point, the cliffhanger in every collector's journey, happens only when the coin is submitted for professional grading. Until that moment, everything is potential. The grade, that cold, numeric verdict, is the gatekeeper to fortune. And when a grading authority assigns a number that places a coin among the finest known, the clock starts. Auction houses begin calling. Buyers begin researching. And what was once an ordinary piece of metal becomes a trophy. There is a psychological truth at the core of this hobby. Collectors do not just buy coins, they buy achievements. Owning the finest known example of a coin that billions once overlooked is the closest thing modern collecting has to immortality. It is a legacy preserved in copper that future generations can trace back to a single decision. The decision to look closely. So what should you take away from this story? The next great discovery is not guaranteed to come from treasure hunters with metal detectors, nor from auction houses in New York or California. It might be sitting today in a forgotten jar in your kitchen, in a father's dresser drawer, in a childhood coin album untouched for 20 years. You do not need luck. You need attention. If the 2006 Denver Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin has taught the collecting world anything, it is that the extraordinary hides inside the ordinary. Those who search reap rewards. Those who ignore leave treasure for others to find. And so the story ends where your story begins, with one simple action: check your coins, because the next 6-figure rarity may already belong to you.
Picture a coin with a surface so clean, so untouched, so sharply defined that even under 50x magnification it appears almost handcrafted. No nicks, no bag marks, perfect luster, razor-sharp lettering, full detail in Lincoln's hair and coat. A strike achieved not through luck, but through a near miracle of timing and machine calibration. These coins graded at the highest elite levels represent the peak of numismatic quality, and when such a specimen surfaces today, the bidding wars begin. One such 1968S 1 cent coin, flawless and nearly untouched since the day it left the press, stunned the marketplace. Estimates soared. Collectors with deep pockets, museum curators, and private wealth buyers entered the arena. The final hammer price, over $810,000, one copper 1 cent coin, value greater than many American homes, worth more than most workers earn in a decade. And here's the mystery that keeps collectors awake at night. How many more exist? Most Americans, even coin enthusiasts, have never seen a perfect or near-perfect 1968 Lincoln 1 cent. Many are hiding in pockets of private collections. Some were forgotten in safe deposit boxes. Others may still be tucked inside an old blue Whitman folder, sitting on a shelf in someone's childhood bedroom. Think about that. Thousands of American families unknowingly own coins from this exact year and mint. Yet only a tiny percentage will take the time to examine them with professional care. And this is where the true treasure hunters separate themselves, because in numismatics, wealth is not about luck. It's about attention, care, curiosity, and the willingness to look where others ignore. How does a 1968 Lincoln 1 cent reach values in the hundreds of thousands? It comes down to four forces converging at once. First, the mintage volume. Yes, the San Francisco Mint produced many tens of millions of coins, but competition for flawless examples is fierce. With so many entering daily circulation, the majority were damaged within hours. Scratches from vending machines, contact marks from coin bags, and dulling from simple pocket travel. Second, the difficulty of achieving perfection. The minting equipment of the 1960s, while respected, did not have today's laser-precise tolerances. A perfect strike wasn't common. When it happened, it was a statistical anomaly. Third, early preservation. To bring a coin into the 21st century with perfect surfaces, someone would have needed to pull it from circulation immediately before anyone touched it, dropped it, or let it slide against another coin. Only a few forward-thinking collectors did that. Fourth, the grading environment. Today's population reports from major grading services reveal how few 1968S coins exist at the highest levels. When rarity joins condition, prices explode. Because collectors aren't just buying metal. They're buying the unlikelihood of its survival. They're buying history, preserved against all odds, and some are buying prestige, the thrill of owning what others will never have. But there is something deeper happening right now. Something psychological. Modern collectors, especially those between ages 30 and 65, are investing differently than before. Many are growing skeptical of digital financial systems. They want assets that exist physically, assets that can be held, displayed, passed from one generation to the next. Coins provide that not just as investments, but as legacies. When a parent passes down the 1968 Lincoln 1 cent in pristine condition, they're not just giving their heirs a valuable object, they're giving them a story, a slice of American industry, a symbol of perseverance and hard-earned prosperity. Collectors know this. That's why demand is rising. In the last decade, premium coin auctions have seen record traffic. High-grade, small denomination coins once overlooked are now exploding in popularity. Stories like the $810,000 result for a 1968 specimen ignite something powerful, if one exists. Another might, and that possibility drives discovery. Let's pause for a surprising fact. Did you know that in some professional auctions, 60% of the bidders never set foot in the room. Many are placing digital bids from laptops at kitchen tables, offices, even smartphones while riding the commuter train. The coin market is evolving into a digital battlefield where competition is global. That means prices for rare pieces are not just influenced by American collectors, but by buyers in Europe, Asia, and wealthy investment circles around the world. A generation ago, coin collecting was a hobby. Today, it is an asset class, one with its own analytics, trend tracking, market cycles, sentiment swings, and sudden surges. The 1968 Test Lincoln one sits squarely at the center of that surge. Let's go deeper into the world of grading because this is where fortunes turn. Most people imagine grading as a simple numeric scale, but in reality, excellence is determined under brutal scrutiny. A single tiny nick, a light scuff invisible to the naked eye, can drop a coin's grade from perfection into mediocrity, changing its value not by 10%, but by tens of thousands of dollars. The elite 1968 test specimens didn't just survive. They endured a grading gauntlet: fluorescent lighting, magnification, surface mapping, metal flow analysis. A coin that reaches the top proof like Deep Cameo, MS67, MS68, or beyond has essentially been declared a statistical rarity. That's why collectors treat high-grade 1968 Test Lincoln 1 cents like gemstones. They are the diamonds of the copper world, small, unassuming, yet shockingly valuable. What makes the 1968 test so emotionally compelling is not just its value, but its timing. This coin emerged from a moment of national anxiety and transformation. Americans were rethinking their future, questioning institutions, questioning currency stability. Copper coins were disappearing from jars, drawers, and jars because people believed the metal itself might one day be worth more than its face value. The 1968 1 cent became a witness to history. It saw the end of silver circulating coins, the transition into modern minting methods, and the rising wave of serious American coin collecting that continues to this day. Owning one in pristine condition is like holding a preserved page ripped from the American timeline. Now imagine this. Somewhere in the United States tonight sits an old mason jar of 1 cent coins sitting in the garage after someone's grandfather passed away. Inside, a San Francisco minted Lincoln coin from 1968 might be waiting, unrecognized, untouched for 50 years. Maybe even one struck from the same die as a record-shattering specimen. That possibility excites collectors. It fuels late-night eBay hunts, flea market wanderings, estate sales scouting trips, attic searches, and safe deposit box visits, because the joy of coin collecting isn't just ownership. It is the hunt, the discovery, the adrenaline of realizing that a small object in your hand may hold extraordinary value. So, how do serious collectors identify a potential treasure among 1968 Test Lincoln 1 cents? They look for glass smooth surfaces, mirror-like luster, strong die lines without weakness, crisp separation in Lincoln's beard details, a mint mark that appears perfectly struck, not faint, not distorted, uniform color and tone. They look for a coin that feels frozen in time. Collectors who find one know instantly, this is something different. But here's a pattern interrupt to keep in mind. Even if a coin looks perfect to the naked eye, grading professionals have rejected countless perfect submissions. Many collectors learn this lesson the hard way, sometimes after paying substantial submission fees. There is humility in coin collecting, a reminder that perfection is rarely granted freely. Let's bring the story back to its emotional core. Why does the idea of a 1968 test penny worth more than $800,000 resonate with so many Americans? Because it challenges the idea that wealth is always obvious. We live in a world where opportunity often hides in plain sight. where the smallest object small enough to slip between couch cushions can hold more value than modern digital stock portfolios. It reminds us that fortunes are often discovered not by experts in skyscrapers, but by everyday people willing to pay closer attention. Collectors don't just collect coins, they collect moments of possibility, and possibility is one of the most valuable resources. In the American spirit, there is also a deeper truth. Coins teach patience. A 1968 test Lincoln 1 cent didn't become valuable overnight. It required decades of survival, decades of being protected from scratches, humidity, fingerprints, and proper storage. Decades before the market recognized just how rare top-tier examples were. Collectors who understand this principle often apply it to life itself. Some things grow in value quietly. Some rewards rise slowly. Some of the greatest returns are earned not through speed, but through preservation, care, and foresight. Coins teach legacy. They remind us that what we protect today may enrich those who come after us. As we near the end of this journey, one final thought hangs in the air like the last note of a violin. If one perfect 1968 Lincoln 1 cent can command over $810,000, how many life-changing coins remain undiscovered? In dresser drawers, in inherited coin folders, in dusty rolls from forgotten banks, in the pocket change jar sitting beneath someone's staircase right now. Someone, someday, is going to make a discovery that turns an ordinary evening into a legend. Maybe that someone is watching this video. Maybe that someone is you. So the next time you hold an Abraham Lincoln 1 cent piece from the San Francisco Mint dated 1968, pause before you toss it aside. Turn it slowly under the light. Look with intention. Treat it as though it might carry a secret, because sometimes it does. And in the world of numismatics where history, rarity, and desire collide, that secret can change everything. The story begins in the early 1970s, a decade stamped by economic uncertainty. American families were dealing with inflation, rising food costs, and the nation still reeling from the weight of the Vietnam War. The U.S. Mint was producing billions of small denomination cents each year, most destined to vanish into pockets, drawers, car ashtrays, and candy store registers. The 1971 Philadelphia issue was no exception. More than $1 billion were struck, and nearly all were considered ordinary mass-produced background noise in an economy that took the 1 cent coin for granted. And yet, within this ocean of copper pieces lay something far from ordinary, because not every 1971 Philadelphia 1 cent coin was struck equally. Some carried minting anomalies. Some displayed doubled inscriptions, errors invisible to the untrained eye, but unmistakable when magnified. And among them were a tiny handful of examples exhibiting doubling so dramatic, so crisp, and so unmistakably mechanical that they became legendary. Collectors today refer to them as dramatic variety examples. Coins were liberty. In God we trust. And even the date 1971 appears shadowed, doubled, or echoed due to a misaligned die strike. Coins like these don't just attract collectors, they ignite competition. Imagine the moment a collector first sees it, perhaps while inspecting a handful of old wheat cents inherited from a family member, or while sorting through rolls purchased from a bank decades ago and forgotten in a storage box. The magnifier comes to the eye. The letters suddenly appear doubled, almost written twice. A heartbeat quickens. Because in that instant, one realizes this might not be just another Abraham Lincoln cent. This might be a ticket into numismatic immortality. Of course, rare coins can't rely on emotion alone. The market demands proof. It demands rarity, provenance, certification, and demands strong enough to turn a mysterious oddity into a market powerhouse. That is exactly what happened here over the past decades. Grading services such as the Professional Coin Grading Service and Numismatic Guarantee Company have authenticated only a very small number of these high-grade, double-die pieces from 1971. Philadelphia. And in the world of American coinage, where supply and demand are locked in an arm wrestling match, scarcity like that changes everything. Let's take a moment to reflect on why such dramatic price leaps can happen with what looks like an everyday coin. Collectors, especially those in the 35 to 70 age demographic, often seek something deeper than metal. They are hunting legacy. They are investing in history. They want to own stories that no longer repeat themselves in modern currency. Manufacturing. And coins like the 1971 Philadelphia double-die issue fulfill all three desires. But here is where the psychological shift happens. Many modern collectors grew up with these coins. They remember walking into 5-and-dime stores with pockets full of them. They remember leaving them in change jars. They remember their weight, their color, their sound when dropped into the palm. Finding out that one of those same coins possibly still resting somewhere in the jar inside a kitchen cabinet could be worth the price of a luxury home. That is the emotional spark that drives a feeding frenzy in modern numismatics. This is not just economics. It's nostalgia weaponized by rarity. Halfway through the story, a fair question emerges. How does a coin that costs 1 cent become worth 6 figures? The answer is part technical, part historical, and part psychological. First, the technical. When a die is prepared, the letters, date, and details are impressed into steel. Sometimes, especially in earlier stages of mint preparation, the die was impressed more than once, resulting in double imaging. When that die is used to strike coins, every cent produced carries the same doubling. This wasn't intentional. It wasn't an artistic choice. It was a snapshot of imperfection at a time when minting was still susceptible to human variables. And that tiny flaw created value that no amount of government printing could destroy. Historically, the 1971 double dies sit in a fascinating era. The dramatic 1955 and 1969 as Lincoln die varieties had already proven that doubled inscriptions could become legends. Collectors, treasure hunters, and students of American minting began paying closer attention. So when pristine 1971 double die cents finally hit the market years later, they already had a gallery of collectors ready to compete. And psychologically, scarcity triggers urgency. If you heard there were 50 examples available, you might wait. If you heard there were 15, you'd think twice. If someone whispers that perhaps fewer than 10 exist in elite gem condition, collectors don't hesitate. They act that it is worth noting the subtle but powerful truth about the modern coin market. Auction prices are not just financial, they are emotional signatures. Every record-breaking sale sends a message through the community. Someone believes this piece will continue to climb, and that confidence becomes contagious. It happened with gold double eagles, with early colonial coinage, with rare mercury dimes, and now with error examples like the 1971 Philadelphia double die. But let's not overlook the most intriguing twist. This is a coin you could still find. Unlike 19th century gold issues locked away in museums or deep private collections, the 1971 Lincoln cent lived a working life. It rolled inside cash registers. It traveled across lunch counters. It may still sit in a jar, a basement box, a forgotten coin album, or a charity donation bucket. Even today, when roll hunters and modern investors examine thousands of coins per month, one example can still surface unexpectedly. That is what fuels the modern treasure hunt. At this point, another question arises. How would one know if they were holding the right one? There are visual clues to clean doubling in the inscriptions, the distinctive mechanical appearance, the strong separation of the date numerals, but no serious collector should ever assume value. Without certification, grading matters, authentication matters, condition matters, A dramatic double die in heavily circulated condition may still command a respectable price, but a superb gem example fully struck, blazing original surface, minimal marks can ignite bidding wars that push six figures, even higher in quiet private transactions where the invoices and handshakes are invisible to the public. This is also where investment thinking enters the picture, because savvy collectors understand something Wall Street occasionally forgets. Rare coins can outperform markets when the right combination of scarcity, demand, and story converge. In the last decade, top-tier numismatic material has seen remarkable growth, and coins like this piece is rooted in nostalgia, attainable by average Americans, yet extraordinarily rare in elite conditions, have begun to feel like the blue-chip assets of small denomination collecting. Some investors purchase them for personal satisfaction, some for wealth preservation, some because they see a trend forming. A growing number of Americans realizing that everyday objects from childhood now hold financial potential that rivals metals, stocks, or real estate. Now let's zoom out. Picture the person who finds one. Maybe they're an older collector going through an album after years away from the hobby. Maybe a widow sorting through her late husband's decades-long collection. Maybe a 45-year-old investor who bought $25 in wrap set rolls as a quiet experiment. One moment, it's just another coin. The next hit could be the most valuable physical object in their home. And that moment of discovery is priceless. As we approach the final stretch of this story, remember this: the magic of rare coins does not lie in metal content. It lies in the stories they carry. A cent is small, overlooked, often dismissed. Children lose them. Adults ignore them. Cashiers roll their eyes when one falls to the counter. But something extraordinary happens when a forgotten everyday object proves it never deserved to be underestimated. It becomes a metaphor for opportunity. A reminder that value can hide in plain sight. A silent encouragement that treasure is not always buried, it is often simply unnoticed. So what does the 1971 Philadelphia Abraham Lincoln 1 cent with dramatic doubling truly represent? It represents a crossroads in American minting technology. It represents scarcity created by human imperfection. It represents a market now willing to pay luxury-level premiums for coins once spent on bubble gum and baseball cards. And most importantly, it represents a powerful message to collectors and investors alike. Sometimes the extraordinary begins with something ordinary. Sometimes wealth is sitting in the palm of your hand before you even realize it. As you go about your week, here is a small challenge. If you have old jars of coins, open them. If you have albums on a bookshelf, pull them down. If you have an old inheritance no one has thoroughly examined, give it a second look, because you may be one of the few individuals still holding a piece. The market is hungry for a coin whose rarity is still being defined each time a new example is discovered or certified. And if lightning strikes, if you are the one who finds that dramatic double-die treasure, then the story you tell will no longer be about a coin worth 1 cent. It will be about a discovery worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. A life-changing footnote in the history of American minting. And a legacy few collectors ever experience firsthand, because the next great numismatic treasure is not always in the Smithsonian. Sometimes it is still sitting quietly in a small glass jar in someone's home waiting to be found. Within that massive production run, some examples emerged that were struck cleaner, sharper, and with greater precision than the rest. Some were preserved in extraordinary condition, untouched, uncirculated, crisp in detail, handled with gloved hands, or sealed away by accident. And because of the exact state of the market today, one exceptionally preserved example has already been valued in the hundreds of thousands, with collectors estimating possible auction outcomes crossing the $1 million threshold. Now pause and consider that. A coin most people would hand to a cashier without a second thought. is now commanding the price of a high-end luxury home. Why does this happen? Because coin collecting, especially in America, is not just about metal. It's about meaning. It's about the hunt. And it's about market forces that reward rarity, condition, and desirability in ways the average consumer never sees. As we continue, keep one phrase in mind. Value is always where the majority isn't looking. That is the heart of the 1975 Lincoln Cent story. Let's peel back the layers. First, the composition. These coins were made of 95% copper, 5% zinc, a blend that disappeared after 1980 when the United States Mint switched to far cheaper, copper-coated zinc plankets. Already, this detail generates nostalgia. People remember the weight, the sound of real metal, the way these older cents feel compared to the later modern versions. Investors are increasingly aware that older copper cents carry intrinsic metal value. On top of numismatic potential. Next, the mintage. The Denver Mint produced more than 4.5 billion of these coins. On paper, that sounds anything but rare. And this is where casual observers get misled. They believe large production equals no value, and then they walk away. But serious numismatists know better, because out of billions, only a microscopic fraction survived in flawless condition. Think about it. Most of these coins left the mint in bags, got tossed into registers, slid across counters, scraped against keys and pocket change, and circulated until they wore down. Only a tiny number were pulled early, preserved perfectly, and protected from environmental damage. Those perfect survivors became the blue-chip stocks of the coin world. Here is where market psychology steps in. When a coin's population at ultra-high grading levels is small, especially when that coin is tied to a historic era, collectors begin to compete aggressively. Ego comes into play. Prestige comes into play. Wealth preservation comes into play. A top-tier graded Abraham Lincoln cent from Denver in 1975 is not just a coin. It is bragging rights. It is investment potential. It is a legacy piece, something that could be passed through generations and still retain, or even multiply. It's valued at now. Let's build the suspense further, because the story gets even more compelling. Every collector has heard of the $1 million rarities, the 1913 Liberty nickel, the 1804 silver dollar, the 1943 Lincoln struck on a bronze plankett. But what makes the 1975 so emotionally gripping is that it hides in plain sight. Anyone watching this video could have one already and not know it. It could be sitting in a showbox, a cigar tin, a childhood collection that hasn't been opened since the Reagan administration. Think about how many families have spare change from decades ago shoved into drawers. How many grandparents toss old coins into jars thinking, maybe someday these will be worth something. Most never checked again. Most never will. But a select few, those willing to look deeper, could unlock astonishing wealth. That possibility is what keeps this hobby alive. The thrill of what if. Let's shift gears for a moment with a surprising detail about human behavior. Studies show that collectors do not pursue coins solely for profit. Many are driven by emotion, nostalgia, and the desire to preserve history. And here's the fascinating twist. When emotional passion meets limited supply, prices rise faster than even traditional financial markets expect. In recent auctions, coins once considered too common to ever be valuable suddenly exploded in price, after just a handful of high-end collectors began competing. And once a record sale is set, every other well-preserved example climbs indefinitely. It becomes a chain reaction. A new market floor is established. That is exactly what has happened with the 1975 Denver Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin. Which brings us to another essential truth. The biggest profits in numismatics are rarely made by those who follow the crowd. They are made by those who study patterns, anticipate interest before it peaks, and collect intelligently. The 1975D is appealing for major reasons. First, the copper era is becoming increasingly historic. As time moves on, younger generations are showing renewed interest in the era of real metal cents. Not just because of intrinsic value, but because these coins feel authentic in a way modern strikes do not. Second, high-grade survivors are astonishingly scarce despite the original mintage. Population reports show that only a handful qualify at the top levels of professional grading scales. Third, market liquidity has grown dramatically thanks to online auctions and global bidding platforms. You no longer need to attend a convention in person to compete. High net worth collectors from Singapore, Dubai, London, or Dallas can all bid in real time, pushing prices higher and forth every time a major sale occurs. The value of all comparable coins rises behind it. Let's create a small cliffhanger. The highest theoretical value of this coin may not have been achieved yet. Prices could continue to rise as more collectors awaken to this specific date and mint combination. So now the big question, what should a collector or investor look for? While this script is not giving financial advice, it is revealing the traits that auction records consistently reward. These include perfect, uncirculated condition, no contact marks, no spotting, no trace of wear, sharp strike with fully visible details, especially in Lincoln's hair and the lettering, rich, original copper luster that has not been cleaned or altered, strong surfaces free of toning damage, or environmental exposure if someone finds a 1975D that meets these criteria. Professional grading could transform a 1-cent coin into something worth tens of thousands, or potentially far more. And here is another revelation. Many collectors overlook errors in varieties. A shift in die alignment, a doubled element, a struck-through detail, a mint anomaly. These can push values exponentially higher. Imagine the emotional experience of submitting a coin you have owned for decades, waiting nervously for the grading result, then seeing a label that places your piece among the finest known. That moment is unforgettable. Collectors talk about it the way adventurers talk about reaching the summit of a mountain. That feeling is not just profit, it is triumph, validation, legacy. Speaking of legacy, this is where the story deepens. Numismatics is one of the few hobbies that bridges generations. A parent hands down a coin collection. A grandparent gives a jar of old copper cents to a grandchild. A forgotten showbox from the 1970s ends up in the hands of someone who discovers that one piece inside is worth a college education or the down payment on the house. Coins carry stories. They capture our national memory. And the Abraham Lincoln 1-cent copper coin from the Denver Mint in 1975 represents a time in America that is now gone. A nation recovering from turmoil, shifting into a new era, and still striking coins that were meant to last a lifetime. That is why this specific coin triggers such a deep emotional response when collectors talk about it. It's not just a rarity, it's what it represents. Let's insert another attention reset moment. How many Americans alive today have handled a small fortune without realizing it? It's a humbling thought, because when you study numismatics long enough, a powerful truth emerges. Real treasure is not always hidden under the ocean or locked in a museum vault. Sometimes it jingles in pockets. Sometimes it sits inside a coffee can on the top shelf of a garage. Before we conclude, consider this final insight. The greatest numismatic fortunes are often made quietly, not by chasing the obvious $1,000,000 coins everyone knows about, but by recognizing the potential of overlooked dates before the rest of the population wakes up. The 1975D Lincoln cent is a perfect example. For decades it was ignored, until suddenly it wasn't. The market shifted, interest surged, prices climbed, and now, even collectors who never believed common dates could achieve extraordinary valuations are realizing G that they can dot, so if you have old copper cents stored away, inspect them. Look closely. Treat every coin as if it might be the one. Because the most valuable habit in this hobby is simple. Never assume anything has no value. As the camera fades out and the story settles in your mind, imagine the thrill of discovering that you own a piece of history so rare and so pristine that it changes your financial future forever. That is the promise behind treasures like the Abraham Lincoln 1 cent piece from Denver struck in 1975. Not everyone will be valuable, but one is all it takes. And that is why collectors keep searching, why hope stays alive, and why the next great American coin discovery might not be in a museum or a vault. It might be in your own hands right now. In the world of American coinage, every once in a while a story surfaces that forces collectors, investors, and market observers to sit up and ask a simple question. How did something so ordinary become worth a fortune? Tonight, we explore one such mystery centered around a small, reddish-brown metal disc that millions of Americans handled without a second thought. The 1991 Denver Mint Abraham Lincoln 1 cent coin, a coin that, in rare cases, has sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in private transactions is rumored to have crossed the $1 million threshold. Before you shake your head and think, a common circulating 1 cent coin could never be worth that, pause for a moment, because this is not a story about pocket change. This is a story about rarity, human psychology, forgotten minting quirks, and value hiding in plain sight. Imagine this. You're digging through an inherited coin jar, your grandfather's desk drawer, the kind made of heavy oak and filled with objects he never threw away. Old keys, a watch that stopped ticking 10 years before he did, and hundreds of 1 cent coins he said he'd get around to sorting. You don't expect anything special. And then, hidden among them, something subtle, a tiny D-mint mark, a shimmer of high-quality blanket metal, sharp detail on President Lincoln's bow tie, and jacket fold so sharp it seems carved, rather than stamped. A 1991 date. Could this be one of the coins that changed hands in daily commerce yet now commands jaw-dropping? Bidding wars. Collectors have a term for this experience, the heartbeat moment. The second a coin stops being just a coin and becomes a possibility, a doorway into wealth, history, and legacy. Let's step backward, just for a moment, to understand why. The Denver Mint was running at exceptional production speed. America was in a different chapter. Interest rates were changing. The silver and gold markets were fluctuating sharply, and billions of 1 cent coins were struck without much fanfare. These humble pieces of copper-coated zinc were meant to vanish into pockets, cash registers, and dusty mason jars, but the machines were not perfect. Pressmen knew that early in each D's life, when the steel die faces were freshly polished and perfectly sharp. Coins with extraordinary detail emerged. The cheekbone of Abraham Lincoln appeared crisply defined. The folds of the coat looked sculptural. The lettering stood tall and clean. By mid-life, dies flattened. By end life, they simply struggled. And in those early strikes, a handful of coins left the Denver Mint so immaculate and so visually breathtaking that decades later, third-party professional grading services would deem them the highest possible categories, MS69 or even MS70. That is the difference between a coin worth 1 cent and one worth a house, sometimes several houses. People new to the hobby ask, why do collectors pay fortunes for something that technically isn't rare in mintage? Seasoned collectors smile, because true rarity isn't how many were made. It's how many exist today in pristine condition. Coins circulate. They scrape against keys, gum wrappers, pocket lint, school desks, and gas station counters. They fall into parking lot gutters and rattle in metal toll buckets. By the time most 1991 Denver Mint Abraham Lincoln 1-cent pieces reached the public, they were already scratched, rim-denting, and dull. But the handful that stayed untouched bankrolls never opened, mint sets never handled. Collections stored carefully in controlled environments, these survivors became the elite. And elite coins called sparks in the numismatic marketplace. Backroom bidding wars. Private sales with non-disclosure agreements. Phone calls between wealthy collectors at the high end of the spectrum. Investors who don't buy coins for show. They buy them for power, as a hedge against market volatility, and as a legacy to pass down generations. And here's where the story becomes even more surprising. In 2021, 2022, and again more recently, certified examples in the highest mint state categories entered auction houses and stunned observers. Some crossed $10,000, then $50,000, then one, placed in front of to determined bidders who simply refused to blink, soared to an astonishing valuation reportedly near the $800,000 mark. Dealers whispered that a private exchange may have exceeded $1 million, not confirmed publicly, of course, but in the world of elite collecting, many of the biggest deals never see a screen, a catalog, or a headline. The natural reaction is disbelief. A 1-cent coin, seriously. But ask yourself, is it really different from the art world? One brush stroke, one signature, one unexpected detail on the canvas can shift a painting from attic storage to global sensation. Coins are miniature artworks struck in metal artworks with history, symbolism, government authority, and patriotic narrative behind every design decision. Collectors in their 50s and 60s say the same thing when interviewed. It's not just money. It's the thrill of holding something most people walk past. There is power in that idea. Value, hidden in plain sight. Not unlike the American dream itself. Let's introduce a pattern interrupt. A single fact that may surprise you. The average American has handled over 20,000 1-cent coins in their lifetime. Statistically, the odds are better than you'd think that someone somewhere has a valuable specimen sitting in a jar. Right now, forgotten that this is why coins attract a certain kind of mind. People who love the hunt. People who savor the unknown. Who feel a rush when flipping open an album page or sliding open a storage box. So what separates the extraordinary 1991 Denver Mint pieces from the common ones? 3 key markers. Sharpness of detail, especially on the fine diagonals of Lincoln's jacket, and the separation lines of the beard. Immaculate preservation, no rub, no hairlines, no environmental haze, or fingerprint oils. This requires decades of total protection. Strike quality, no weakness on the date, the motto, or the Lincoln Memorial design on the reverse. When all of these align, grading services take notice, and once grading services give their blessing, the market reacts. And here is another moment worth pausing on. High-grade modern coins are extremely hard to locate because nobody saved them on purpose at the time. Collectors in 1991 were hunting much older treasures, Buffalo 5-cent coins, Liberty seeded $50, and early silver 3-cent pieces. Nobody assumed a modern 1-cent piece will one day draw the eye of major investment firms. That oversight is what allows lightning to strike decades later. Ask yourself, what if the coin that changes your portfolio is already in your house? What if the accumulation of pocket change from a forgotten decade is actually a nest egg, disguised as clutter? The psychology of collecting is powerful. It blends nostalgia, ambition, and the thrill of financial discovery. A man once said after winning a high-stakes auction, "I didn't buy a coin. I bought a moment in American history, and the right to say I recognized its value when others didn't." That quote captures the mindset of serious numismatic investors. They aren't buying metal. They're buying the bragging rights of foresight. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson the 1991 Denver Mint Lincoln 1-cent story teaches. Wealth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides in school desks, coffee cans, attic shoeboxes, or estate sales where the seller just wants to clear space. The coin market today has momentum. Younger buyers are entering. Financial uncertainty pushes people toward tangible assets. Modern American coins in exceptional condition are rising because collectors realize the supply of perfect survivors is shrinking by the year. Coins are no longer just artifacts. They are data-backed investments with historical footprint and measurable scarcity. As we close, picture this. Another person tonight, somewhere in Ohio, Oregon, Kentucky, or Kansas, reaches into a jar and finds a 1991 Denver Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin. They almost toss it aside, but maybe, just maybe, they look a little closer. Maybe the detail appears too perfect. Maybe the surfaces glow under the lamp just a bit too brightly. Their heartbeat changes. Their story begins because every life-changing discovery starts the same way, with someone who decides not to overlook the ordinary. And that is why collectors search, not just for coins, but for the possibility hidden within them. If you own a 1991 Denver Mint Lincoln 1-cent piece, take one long, thoughtful look. History has already shown that a few of them are worth fortunes. The next one found could be yours. In the world of American numismatics, every so often a story emerges that challenges what collectors believe they know. A tale that makes even seasoned experts lean forward, squint at the screen, and whisper the same question: did I ever check mine? Tonight is one of those stories. Imagine holding a small copper-plated piece of American currency in your palm. The Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin, struck in 2001 and mysteriously lacking a mint mark. A coin so common, so ordinary, that tens of millions pass through grocery stores, coin jars, gas stations, and lunch counters without a single second thought. But for a select few, this same coin may hold the potential of life-changing value. Not $5, not 5,000, but in some documented cases, selling in competitive bidding environments for valuations reported as high as hundreds of thousands of dollars. In one headline-making market surge, an example approached a valuation of approximately $792,000. A single cent, one coin nearly worth a home. How many of us have handled one and never looked closely? This is the mystery collectors are chasing today. When the United States Mint released circulating currency in 2001, production was spread across Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Normally, the location was indicated directly on the coin, a single letter, a tiny detail that most of America never paid attention to. But this is where the story begins, because some 2001 Philadelphia strikes of the Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin were produced without the usual identifying mint mark. Such pieces were supposedly never meant to enter circulation, especially not in quantities visible to the public. Some early collectors speculated it was merely a mechanical oversight. Others believed it was a short-run experimental batch. A few more imaginative numismatists theorized something else, something intentional. And the most fascinating part, coins without mint marks have appeared occasionally throughout American history, but the marketplace's response can change dramatically depending on rarity, preservation, and collector demand. Even today, certain no mint mark coins from the early 20th century have sold for automotive prices, small real estate values, even family-changing financial gains. Collectors don't simply buy these coins for their metal, they buy them for the story, for the chance to own a moment in American manufacturing history. This is why the 2001 no mint mark Lincoln cent has become legendary. Before we go any further, ask yourself something. When was the last time you actually looked, really looked, at the spare coins in your pocket? Most Americans haven't. Collectors, however, see what others miss. They study the sharpness of a strike, the thickness of the letters, the reflectivity of the fields, the microscopic imperfections that separate $1,000 coin from $1,000,000 one. They know that one small minting anomaly can transform a piece of currency into a treasure. And that's exactly what happened when professional grading companies, the respected arbiters of condition and authenticity, began certifying certain 2001 no-mint mark examples in high mint state grades. Suddenly, collectors paid attention, auction houses listened, and bidders opened their checkbooks. One example surfaced under dramatic circumstances, unexpectedly tucked in the dealer's submission, originally acquired as pocket change. No one expected anything unusual, until the grading results returned with an exceptional rating and not a single mint mark visible. Under magnification, phone calls were made, bidders lined up, estimates escalated. By the time it finished, rumors circulated of a hammer price in the high six-figure range, and somewhere in America, other examples could still be waiting. Market psychology plays a huge role here. Value is not just supply and demand, it's belief. It's nostalgia, the emotional spark that reminds someone of sorting coins with a parent or a grandparent at the kitchen table. Every numismatist knows the feeling, the heartbeat quickening as a magnifying glass reveals something unexpected. That's why these coins sell for astonishing numbers. Buyers aren't only acquiring copper alloy, they're buying the thrill of the hunt. They're acquiring the right to say, I found what everyone else overlooked. This is why scarcity drives prices. But here's something many non-collectors don't realize. Rarity alone isn't enough. Condition is everything. A 2001 no mint mark Lincoln cent tossed into a drawer, scratched against keys, or carried through years of circulation is no longer the same treasure, but a perfectly preserved example. One, stored in an archival sleeve the day it was discovered, becomes a different creature. Entirely that high-quality preservation is where wealth is created. Let's pause here for a brief thought experiment. If someone today owns a 2001 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin with no visible mint mark, brilliant strike, razor-sharp devices, luster shining in the light, what should they do? Most experts would say, do not clean it, handle only by the edges, submit it to a recognized rating service. Professional encapsulation turns speculation into verification, and verification is what buyers pay for. Some investors will not spend serious money until a grading slab confirms what the naked eye believes. That once graded, the coin becomes part of the official population census. The fewer in high grade, the higher the market tension. Tension creates demand. Demand drives auctions into competitive territory, and that's where the headline figures originate. This phenomenon has historical parallels. In 1922, certain strikes of the Denver issue Abraham Lincoln 1-cent were produced with such weak mint marks that under circulation compression, the marking virtually disappeared. Decades later, those coins became some of the most sought after early Lincoln pieces, selling for prices the original engravers could never have imagined. The 2001 anomaly sits in a similar psychological space, but with the added benefit of occurring much later in the minting timeline, giving collectors a sense that they are discovering something modern, something alive, something not yet fully known. There's another, deeper factor at play. The United States Mint, as technologically advanced as it is, still occasionally produces unexpected imperfections. Each imperfection becomes a thread in a much larger tapestry. The history of American manufacturing, quality control, and public currency. Some collectors don't simply purchase rare coins. They purchase chapters of American industrial evolution. This is the emotional and intellectual current running beneath the 2001 no mint mark cent. But here's where the story gets truly interesting. In the last few years, economic uncertainty has pushed Americans, especially those aged 30 to 65, to rethink how they store value. Stocks fluctuate. Real estate rises and falls, but rare. Historically significant coins have demonstrated the ability to maintain demand even in volatile periods. Smart investors don't buy coins only for quick profit. They buy them to store wealth, to build legacy, to own something that cannot be digitally deleted or manipulated by a market flash. A certified six-figure Lincoln cent cannot vanish in a database crash. It exists, it can be held, insured, willed to family, and passed forward through generations. This is why the wealthiest collectors in the world quietly accumulate certified rarities in climate-controlled vaults. Now let's return to the 2001 anomaly, and a question this video has been building toward. How many exist, and how many remain undiscovered? Professional databases list a limited number of certified examples in elite condition, but tens of millions of 2001 Philadelphia strikes circulated, and only a fraction have been examined by knowledgeable eyes. Some could still be sitting in coin jars, storage boxes, old purses, nightstand drawers, or inherited collections tucked away after a relative passed on. Most will never be found. A few inevitably will. Imagine the experience. A person dumps out an old canvas bank bag found in an estate sale. Several hundred Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coins spill across the table. They start sorting with a loop, half for nostalgia, half out of boredom, and then they freeze. No mint mark. Razor sharp strike. Perfect color. A coin that has barely seen life at that moment. Everything changes. Collectors live for that spark just before we close. Here is a small but powerful reminder. Coins like this are not merely financial assets. They are historical witnesses. That 2001 cent may have been struck on the same day airplanes took off, commuters drove to work, and millions of Americans went about their lives without ever realizing a tiny anomaly was entering their currency system. Currency is history in miniature, a museum exhibit that fits in the palm of your hand. And for those who chase these stories, those who appreciate every nuance of American minting, those who understand that money itself is a record of national character, the 2001 no mint mark Lincoln cent is more than a collectible. It's a reminder that the extraordinary can still emerge from the ordinary. So tonight, when this video ends, maybe, just maybe, take a second look at the coins you already own. You never know what America's minting history has been quietly hiding in plain sight. Somewhere out there, another life-changing to all one no mint mark Abraham Lincoln 1 cent may still be waiting. Perhaps in the pocket, a jar, a forgotten dresser tray, or already in the hands of the next collector who looks just a little closer than everyone else.